there, it's Jodi Arego, and I wanted to spend a couple minutes with you today and share with you how I approach editing a client image. I specialize in high school senior girls, and as much as I love working with them, they are so much fun. My favorite part is definitely not what happens after the session when I have to then go home and sit at my computer screen behind my desk. I don't love that part. I would rather be doing so many other things like being with my family and hanging out with my friends. And so I need a workflow that is fast and efficient and effective so I can get my work done, move on, and live my life. So let me share with you how I would approach an image. This is Megan. She was one of my senior girls last month, and we had a great time. Collected a nice variety of poses to include in her gallery, and I'm going to edit this one image with you today. So before I move on to my editing steps, I have to pause and say that the best thing that I do for myself, editing wise, is think of editing before I press the shutter. When I can give myself a nice straight out of the camera image, I have given myself a gift because it is way easier to polish an image than it is to use that time to correct mistakes that can often be avoided. So that is something that I spend a good amount of time just trying to remember before I start shooting, to check my ISO, to make sure that my exposure is right, to make sure my color, I shoot Kelvin, to make sure that number is pretty close to where I probably would want it to be. And then when that happens, when I have set myself up for success, then I can bring an image like this one into Camera Raw. I process my raw images in Camera Raw, and it really should be just easy peasy tweaking. So let's go. So this image, the first thing I notice is that my histogram does not go from end to end, and that just means that I don't have enough information across my tonal range. So I do over here on the right at my whites, but if you look over on the left, there's a gap. So what I'm going to do is go to the blacks, pull it to the left, and you can see as I do that, it already brings in some nice depth. I'm really happy with what that did. And then I want to look at exposure and white balance. And I look at both when I'm in RAW. The one that seems to need the most work is what gets my attention first. So here the exposure is looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to tweak my white balance. I could easily slide this temperature slider, but I could also use Megan's white shorts as a sample point since she's wearing white and see if that helps me. So typically she was in some shade. It was light shade, and I'm guessing I'm going to want to be somewhere over 7,000, maybe not much, but this still looks a little bit cool to me. So I'm going to go over here, grab my white slider, my white balance sampler, and I'm just going to click. And you can see that depending on where I click, look what happens when I do green. It just changes the white balance. And it's kind of to your eye as to what seems to feel right to you. So I'm going to go somewhere what feels right. I'm liking this corner of her shorts the best. We're going to go here. All right. This looks good to me, and the exposure still looks nice. And the only thing I want to do before I move it into Photoshop is go over to the luminance panel, and if I affect the orange, it will give her a nice glow on her face. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to pull this to the extreme. You can see how the orange affects skin tones. And of course I'm not going to make her look all freaky like that, but if I pull it back, she won't look as scary, and I tend to like something around 0.8. It just adds a nice little pop of radiance. So things are looking good, and I'm going to open her up in Photoshop. All right, so here the image is, and honestly, I mean, it's looking like I just need a couple of simple steps. The first thing I want to do is add some more contrast. We did that when we brought in the blacks, but now I want to do that here in Photoshop by adding a curves layer set to soft light. Watch what happens when I set it. It's going to make a big effect. You can, though, adjust the opacity of that. So I'm going to slide my opacity down somewhere around 23 is where I find that I like to do this. I'm going to grab a round brush, go to the mask, and I'm going to mask off what we did from her face, because who really wants contrast and depth added to their skin? I know that I don't need my crevices accentuated any more than they are. So let me do her hands too. I'm going to toggle it on and off for you to see. You can see how it just brings some life to the picture, just to have that depth and contrast, and it really affects the colors. Look at the trees. It looks nice and rich. All right, the next thing I want to do is a small little mid-tone bump. So I'm going to go back to a curves layer, put a center point down, and then just boost it up a tad. And that brightens the scene nicely. Now, if I don't like all of that, I can always change the opacity, or I can use a brush and brush off where I don't like it. So I tend to like it right here on her skin, but I'm actually enjoying the left side of the screen being a little darker. So I'm going to invert my mask and then just paint it on, just to brighten up her face. Toggle on, toggle off. There we go. Okay. Well, it looks good here. There's a couple of spots I want to clean up though before we leave. So I'm going to flatten these layers, and I'm going to duplicate the image. I think that the circles under her eyes could be reduced a little bit. So I duplicated the layer. I'm going to go to the patch tool, and I'm going to lasso or make a selection around each of those under eye areas. And if I move it over and replace it with some area from her cheek, they completely go away. Now I don't want to do it completely because it can look a little flat. So again, I'll reduce the opacity. And I can still get some dimension and form in her face without the dark shadows. That looks good. Okay. And the last thing I want to do, I'm going to flatten that, is I can't decide what I think about this little window right here. In some ways, it's just part of the background, but I do wonder what it would look like, the scene would look like if it was a little cleaner. So I'm going to duplicate the layer, and then I'm going to drag that top layer down. I'm going to add a mask and invert the layer. Bring in a brush, and I'm going to paint on that new white area to this scene, taking away the effect of the window. And I can toggle it on and off. So do we like the window or do we not like the window? I'm going to go without it because my eye does kind of move to that right area of the frame. So, I mean, on one hand it just kind of frames her, but I'll go ahead and leave it off. And that's it. I'm going to layer, go to flatten, crop. Let's bring the composition in to where her eyes meet more of the intersection on the rule of thirds grid. And there we have it. This is an edit, and it took us probably less than 5 minutes to do. So I can batch edit all of those steps, and as long as my images were taken in the same conditions or with a similar setup, editing is really a breeze. So I can move on and go hang out with my family. So I hope that you learned maybe a tip or a trick that would help you in your efficient workflow. And thanks for being here and for letting me share.